Hi, and welcome back to ConTinual. It's another episode of Hot Off the Press, the show about new releases and the authors that are bringing them to you. And so tonight we've got a whole bunch of people here, and they're already off the rails before we get started. So everybody consider yourself well warned. I'm going to be your host, Jim Nettles. And before we dive in, let's make sure and see who all has decided to join the fray. So Paige, you're up first.
Hi, folks. I'm Paige L. Christie. I write what in the US, I guess, is epic fantasy, and what in the UK is low fantasy. And it usually has a feminist twist to it. So come check me out.
JD?
Greetings, fellow humans. My name is JD Estrada. I am a Puerto Rican indie author who decided to move to Atlanta so that I could see the real world life premiere of The Walking Dead with everything that's happened in the last couple of years. I'm a multi-genre author. I write urban fantasy, middle grade fantasy, poetry, nonfiction, and a partridge in a pear tree.
John?
I'm John L. French, retired CSI, did 40 years at the Baltimore City Police Department. I write crime stories, pulp, paranormal investigation, and that's about it.
Amy?
Hi, I'm A.L. Kaplan. I write science fiction, soft science fiction, fantasy, mostly YA, and I forgot what else I was going to say.
Jenny?
Hi, I'm Gini Koch. I write the Alien Catherine Kitty Cat series for Dog Books. I also write under a variety of pen names and in all lengths and all genres. And I thought it was mighty bold of JD to assume we're all humans here.
Yeah, that is kind of pushing your luck.
Lucienne?
Hi, I'm Lucienne LeBeau. I'm the LGBTQ plus author of several horror and mystery fiction books. I wrote the Silver Hollow trilogy, The Walking Doctor, and my upcoming project, Nowhere.
Patricia?
Hi, I'm Patricia Sargeant. I write romance as Regina Hart, romantic suspense as Patricia Sargeant, and mysteries as Olivia Matthews.
And Marisa?
Hi, I am Marisa Wolf. I write science fiction, fantasy, and every little corner I can get my grubby hands on in between.
So let's find out a little bit about what you guys have brought to stack up everybody's to-be read pile. So Paige, there's a little book you've been working on for about, 50 years now? 60?
Yeah.
70?
Yes, it was supposed to be out in 2020, but it got derailed, as so many things have done. This is the Stormforge. Whee! This is the final. I just got the cover last night. This is the final book in the Legacies of Arnon series, book 4, and I'm super excited that it's finally here and finally done, and it will be out on October 18th. And oh my God, I'm so excited. It's done. Whew.
So tell us a little bit about what's coming in the big finale.
Oh, well, I can't get too spoilery. Basically, the series is a feminist Western with dragons, and it's kind of a mega flip on the Dragon Slayer trope. So the basic idea behind the series is, what if the woman chained to the rock, waiting to be eaten by the dragon, and the hero is coming to save her, wants to be there? And why would that be? And what happens next? So it's a very intimate epic, if that's not a contradiction in terms. I'm a character-driven writer, and so the books all kind of lean toward very interior, very deep character dives that take you through the story. It's a non-linear story. I don't tell things in order. Things jump around all the time, time-wise, but it seems to work. So yeah, it's been a really fun project. The first 2 books were actually NaNoWriMo books. Who knew, right? And I've really had a great time with it. I'm super excited to have the finale out there and see who of all those folks out there who don't read a series till it's done. It's done. You can pick up the first book now. So please do, and let me know what you think. Love it, hate it, anywhere in between. Yeah.
But JD, what are you bringing in tonight?
A couple of years ago, I released a bilingual collection called 2020. 20 pieces in English, 20 pieces in Spanish, and in the middle, there's actually a bilingual poem that rhymes. Some people don't read it because they don't read English. Some people don't read it because they don't read Spanish. And eventually, I got to the point where I was like, I want people to read it. So I brought an all English version of 2020. It's 3 short stories. Well, actually 6 short stories because it used to be 3 and 3. 6 short stories, several poems, several essays. Variety is the spice of life, and I like things spicy, not in the erotica way. There's no erotica in this one. So if you're looking for that, it's never going to be under my pen name. It's going to be a mystery if I ever do that. And I'm never going to tell. But hey, I was dared, and I've been thinking about it for a while, but I'm still thinking about it. So when I say that there's variety in the series, the short stories, there's one that's kind of sci-fi. There's one that's about a journeyman boxer who should have retired a long time ago, but he has one more fight in him apparently against someone that wants to use him to bolster up his resume. There's a short story that's set in Puerto Rico in a traffic jam. If you've ever been in Puerto Rico, traffic jams are very common. Right now, they're very common, and I really hope that everyone back home is doing as okay as possible after Hurricane Fiona. Poetry, there's some that are slam, there are some that are super, super. I wanted it to have true structure and then free verse and just, again, variety. This is me pushing variety and telling people I'm not a one-trick pony. There are several moves here, and something that I really wanted to do was also push myself in terms of translation. And I learned that a text translator does not help me much when I go from Spanish to English, because I actually write Puerto Rican, not Spanish. And I found that out very early on and going like, oh, I have to rewrite this entire thing.
John, what are you bringing in tonight?
The Last Monster. It is just like Paige, it is the final book in a series. Almost 20 years ago, I wrote a short story featuring Bianca Jones, a Baltimore City police detective. In that story, she fights a monster, be specific, Shub-Niggurath. And then she learns, do a job once, and it's yours. And from there on in, she became the unofficial, then official monster hunter for Baltimore City Police Department. There are 3 collections of her stories, along with some spin-offs. And it's time to bring her story to a close. The first book was called Here There Be Monsters. The second one was called Monsters Among Us. And this is called, appropriately, The Last Monster. It has a wide range. There are some parts of it that take place in Tudor England. There are other stories that partly take place in hell. There's one story that takes place in Ocean City, Maryland. With all this, Bianca deals with mummies, werewolves, the Lord of Hell, and of course, the Last Monster. And as what her fate is, I'm gonna have to read the book, find out. But I tell you, this is definitely Bianca's last book. No takes back, no coming back. It's her story is done.
Famous last words. Amy?
My latest is Mark of the Goddess, which you cannot see unless I put it right in front of my face with the background.
You're a shifter now. All right.
Yes, I am. But and funny you should mention that. There's some funny things that happen in this one. It's about a young girl who's been marked by her goddess. She has golden jaguar eyes, but that's pretty much a death sentence in her village. So she has to dye them dark to hide them, or she's going to be sacrificed to the death god. Had a lot of fun writing it. and also did some illustrations in it as well, which was a challenge, even though I have an art background, rusty art background. Finally forced myself to sit down and just do the drawings, which was kind of necessary because I may have created a 6-foot carnivorous plant, and I kind of wanted a picture in it. So I don't know if I can show it to you, but if I put it right here,
Can we see it?
There's a little skull there, but if I don't have my, I need to have my, should have turned the background off.
Or put the picture in the background.
Right, I don't have the picture. I do have the cover on the background, along with some of my others. It is a short story, YA.
So Jenny, what all are you bringing this time?
Well, sadly, not what I know everybody's waiting for, because no aliens like us, not done it really soon, I swear. Moving on. Newest release, all short stories. I have a short story in Brave New Worlds, which just came out from Zombie Brains. And they also just released Noir and the Breaking Glass Slipper. So all three of those are really great. I'm only in Brave New Worlds, but that is the prequel story to my Belters series. So that I think that collection is going to be coming out next year. She said, looking confused, but I think it's going to come out next year. So this is the prequel story to that. And then I talked about this on the last one, but Predator, Eyes of the Demon, I'm also in. And that keeps hitting #1 in various categories. So it's very exciting. And thank you. It's my first #1 anywhere. So I'm super excited about that. My story in that is cannon fodder. My story in Brave New Worlds is Little Big Planet. And then also behind me, a reasonably recent release, Gunfight on Europa Station, which also has a Belchers short in it. So that's shown on Big Rock 27. So that's what I'm pimping tonight.
Lucienne?
Well, my reading list just got huge. So that's amazing. Okay. I'm like, yeah, I want to read it. Yeah, I want to read it. My latest work is Project Nowhere, and it's about 6 scientists that are stranded at a desolate Antarctic biodome where they're preparing for a desolate planet. They're picked off one by one by an unseen creature, and their goal is to survive.
Is it Lovecraftian? It kind of sounds Lovecraftian.
A little bit.
Yes. Yes.
Jenny, we just spent an hour talking about horror and what was going to put you underneath the bed.
I know, but I can actually read Lovecraftian because I write it. So I can usually read it. And as long as Lucienne doesn't say it was from personal experience. If she's like, no, I'm the last one alive, I can't touch it.
That's fine. Yeah. I'm actually not allowed to write about that because then I'll be cursed.
Stop, girl. I can't buy the book.
Yeah.
If I can't, I'll do a scare for you. Yeah. Stop while we're ahead and then get it.
Patricia, how about you? What are you bringing?
Well, thanks for asking, Jim. My new release, Murder Out of Character, is the second book in my Peach Coast Library Mystery Cozy Mystery series that I write as Olivia Matthews. And in this second book, our reluctant amateur sleuth, Marve, she's a fish out of water librarian. And by that, I mean she's a native New Yorker born and raised who chooses to relocate to a very small southern town for career advancement. And Marve finds this list with 4 seemingly random names on it. And one of the people has died under mysterious circumstances. And when a second person on the list dies mysteriously, Marve is afraid that this isn't a random list, it's a hit list. And there's a serial killer in Peach Coast. And her new best friend, Spence, is on the list.
Hate it when the friends show up on the list, then you got to do something.
Really good.
I know, you got to get off the sofa.
Yeah.
Can't just wait around.
Marisa. Oh, well, yeah, you can, but
And how good of a best friend is he really? Just kidding. Just kidding. That sounds awesome.
It's a new best friend, so
It's right. He's
Right?
new.
I mean,
No replacement
just
still at that
everyone.
phase.
You know, just clear
Because
the
other
deck.
friends.
You know, it's fine. You made a lot of friends, I'm sure. It's easy to make friends as an adult.
expendable.
Yeah, right. Nice.
You've seen Jenny's Predator story. So, Marisa,
Yes,
let me
yeah.
guess. You're coming to talk about some little book with Valkyries.
I am here to talk about the Valkyries Initiative, which came out September 16th, so still hot off the press. It is an anthology that launches a new spin-off on the existing Hit World universe. It is urban fantasy, and it introduces the first 15 women who may or may not be tapped for the Valkyries Initiative. So my story kicks it off with the woman who ends up getting reluctantly-ish put in charge. And so you'll see her notes all the way through the anthology. After each story, she has little memo notes, which I wrote mostly because I was a little punchy after putting together this anthology. But the authors have said it's one of their favorite parts. So it's good times. It's the Hit World universe has been described as genre gumbo because it's one of those worlds where everything that's possible is real because there are dimensions and they feed into each other. And so you've got real Valkyries, you've got half succubi, you've got humans, you've got assassins, you got all kinds of folks. But the key piece was that they be fully well-rounded, well-lived women lead protagonists. So it's 15 super fun stories. And I even had 2 token dudes work on it. So, you know,
Nice.
13 lady authors and 2 dude authors.
So let's dive a little bit deeper into what you're bringing.
Mhm.
So, JD, when we take a look, no running away now. We've got you now. So when we take a look, what's kind of the overarching, look, feel that you want people to get out of the book? Because it's a collection. It really gets a good sense of who you are as an author and a lot of the different flavors. What's somebody going to walk away with? So if you picked what your favorite story out of it, and I know that's like picking your favorite child, what's somebody going to get out of it?
It's a double-edged question because it's like, what's my favorite English story that was always English, and the one that I think the translation worked best. So I can't just give you a one. By far, I think that my best short story that I've ever written is Journeyman. It shows that I love boxing, and if you've ever seen a boxing match and been compelled by by the brutality that you're seeing in the ring and still enjoying it, I try to capture that a lot, and I have a soft spot for journeymen, for older people in sports and in right now in bodyboarding, competitive bodyboarding. Mike Stewart is like my guy, and he's been the guy for like forever. He's pushing 60 and he's still competing at an elite level. So that's how much this means to me. And I just wanted to give Marquez Thunder Ward one last shot. And it's not an easy fight. He might not win it. He might not survive it, but you're there with him every punch that he takes and every verbal jab that he receives from the other guy, who is inspired by some boxers that I'm not a big fan of. But I wanted true villains. So I there's definitely ample people to pick from who suck. And in Spanish, I think the one, how I write in English and how I write in Spanish, there are certain differences. When I write in Spanish, it's a lot more emotional. It's a lot more personal. And there's one story that is called Lane Change, Cambio de Carril. It's a young man who's late for work, and he's lamenting his job and his existence, and everything, again, sucks. And he suddenly realizes that the phone that has been vibrating nonstop, it wasn't his work that was calling. It was someone with really bad news. So he has all that time to mull over what he's going through. Again, 2 very personal stories, 2 very human stories. I love exploring the humanity of different things. Even when I write urban fantasy, I love exploring the humanity, of a vampire. and a Therian and a plant person and an angel and a demon, because humanity is not exclusive to humans. So there are so many different little tidbits that I like to hone in on in terms of what humanity is for this or that. In the poems, being a Hispanic guy in the States is an interesting conundrum at sometimes, because I'm torn between a black and white world quite often, and I don't want to side with either. I want to be with everyone. So there's also that, and there's also a lot of messages of unity. And also there are some cheeky moments where I talk about, I don't know. There's a poem that is Ode to the Stock Photo Girl, because if you work in advertising, and I do work in advertising, you come across some weird things. So I talked about two very human things, but there's also humanity in some WTF moments. On one occasion, I was searching, we were doing a food styling, and I was searching for peppers, and I searched for hot peppers on a stock photo image site. And I got, I don't know how many naked pictures. And I was like, this is not what I was looking for. And I was like in the office, and everyone was like, dude, what are you looking for? And I'm like, no. So basically I took that experience and another experience, and I made a little poem and a little ditty about a guy who's obsessed with a stock photo model who keeps appearing in different layouts. So it's little glimpses of humanity, some that are more heartfelt than others, and some that are very cheeky, because I like cheek.
That explains the hot peppers. So, John, tell us a little bit more, because I mean, again, you're wrapping up the series. So kind of from a world building standpoint, what's the universe that your reader is going to fall into? Because now that you're wrapping it up, somebody gets to dive in and blow through the whole thing now. You get to binge read.
My universe is basically Baltimore and its environs, but it's a hidden world. The average person is not aware that there are that monsters are real, that demons are real, that there are Yorkies around. Yes. And Bianca wasn't aware until she started investigating a case. But but what's the basis of my world, and I did not realize I was doing this until I was, basically into Monsters Among Us, is that the foundation of it is forgiveness and redemption. Yes, there are monsters, but there's also there are also angels. There are devils. If there is the devil, there is the divine. And Bianca finds herself sort of in the middle of both of them. And in the first book, she steals souls from the devil, which basically ticks him off. In the second book, she has to deal with a would-be messiah. And all of them are sort of, she holds out at least the chance of redemption to a lot of the people, a lot of the creatures and the people that she faces. Some accept it, some do not. And the last monster, when she faces, the penultimate story in The Last Monster might be the story of the ultimate redemption. And there is a reason that in the first story, I start with the first canto of Dante's Divine Comedy, Inferno, and the penultimate story starts with the final canto of Inferno. And the first story in my first book, Here There Be Monsters, is called Out of the Darkness, or Out of the Blackness. And the last full story of The Last Monster is Into the Black. I try to take what I had written and wrap everything up in the Last Monster, even if my reader doesn't fully realize.
So, Amy, tell us a little bit more about the world we're going to be stepping into.
It is a fantasy world, jungle kind of area. Be careful as you're walking through that jungle, though, because there are a lot of dangerous creatures. Some of them are in our worlds. Some of them are only in this one, like the 6-foot carnivorous plant, which happens to have a look-alike that people get food from. So you got to be careful as you're walking around in there. And that's one of the reasons I did some of the drawings, because I did create several unusual plants. And I wanted to add a little flair to it, for a little backstory on some of the plants. Also had I used the ancient Mayan pantheon as a springboard inspiration for the story, and some of the names are a little hard for me to pronounce, so I made a pronunciation guide to help other people. Something I didn't think about when I was actually writing it. I thought about that when I went, oh, I need to read this aloud tomorrow. How do I pronounce apuk? And then began this wonderful search into how to actually pronounce them, because I wanted to get at least close to that. But it is a jungle. It's a small village. There's a big temple, and of course there's a jaguar goddess. One of my favorites. One of the scenes when the concept for this story came from a dream I had, where I just saw this jaguar staring at my main character Maya, and yeah, that dream gave me chills. So I got up and started writing this story.
And they look at you, and the question is, what are they hungry for?
Yes. Are you here to help me, or are you here to eat me? Mm-hmm. And she does ask. She's a little desperate at that particular moment.
Jenny, how about you? So when you look at your story in Brave in Brave Worlds, what are we going to be stepping into for your story?
In Brave New Worlds, the anthology goal was you were either headed to a new world, you're at a new world, or you are talking about going to a new world. But it's forms of exodus and leaving and moving on and so forth. And so when I was invited in, I had to think, what do I want to do? And I realized that in the Belters is a collection of short stories that are loosely connected to each other. And when I write them, there are two dangers in the solar system. Like I see, we're very far in the future. We have expanded into our own solar system because we got short range FTL before long range. And despite what all the movies have told us, no one's come to visit. And so humanity is just kind of like, okay, fine, we've got enough. We have advanced enough that we can actually expand out into our own solar system. We don't have to go find somebody else. And someone wants to come visit, great, but we're not looking for them. And what keeps the solar system running are the Belters, the people working in the belt. And there are two dangers. One is the pirate armada led by Bozer Geist, which is like the Dread Pirate Roberts, only not fun. And when one dies, is captured very rarely, or is killed by the Galactic Police, more common. Whoever's next in line that's still around takes over. They share learning, and they're actually very good. They figured out how to work within all the laws that the belt has put into place to protect the belt miners and the GP and everybody else. They figured out ways around it. So they're very, very dangerous. But there's another danger, which are the Kalalula, which are giant space squids. And what I realized when I'm doing all the short stories, I write what I consider the real version, and then I'm pulling out any reference to the Kalalula, because in a short story, if you bring it up, something needs to happen with it. It can't just be, hey, there's space squids. Oh, and boom, off we go. So I remove it from there, and then I put them, they're going back in for the collection. And I thought, I know how these things got created. Wouldn't it be awesome to show what humanity did to create the Kalalula? Because it's all humanity's fault. Basically, we go to Europa Prime, which is Jupiter's moon, not the big rock in the belt. And so Europa Prime is an ice planet, but you discover that there is a thriving ecosystem under the ice, and the Kalalula are the top predator. They're there, and they think everything's there for them. So just like humans, we think everything's here for us. The Kalalula think everything's there for them. And so the exploratory team are the people that are making contact and trying to say, we can't terraform this place. We can't do it. And of course, the bad guy is, the government and the military, who are like, we don't care, right? Yeah. Oh, you were able to do what we told you to do. We don't care. We're still going to do it. And in the attempt to, what the bad guys do and what the good guys do to try to counter it, creates a reaction where the Kalalula are literally thrown out off the moon and into space, and they survive. And now they don't like humanity at all. And they all rip the ships apart and everything else. And so there's more to that than you find out in Little Big Planet. But that's how they're created. And I thought, A, it's a great way to do it. And B, since it'll be the first story in the collection, now everybody knows what the Kalalula are. But it is hundreds of years before the next story. So that gets lost, just like everything else. The slaughter of any indigenous person gets lost by who writes the history books. So that was then there's very, very significantly, I called it Little Big Planet for yes. Everybody's good. Oh, Little Bighorn? Yes. Custer was a vicious murder. My writing background is actually Old West. Custer was a vicious murdering bastard who should have died worse than he died. What he did in Washita alone were war crimes of the highest nature. So what happened at Little Bighorn was deserved. And so what happens at Little Big Planet is also deserved. That's what's going on there.
Cheerful space calamari.
They don't like that phrase. They find it insulting.
Fair.
I assumed they might not be happy about that.
No, you would not try to eat them. You try to run. Basically, there are very few humans who encounter them who get to talk about it. But one of the stories in the collection will explain what's going on.
So, Lucienne, tell us about the world we get to fall into this latest project.
So, unlike my other stories that take place on the U.S. or rather the North American continent, which isn't really the North American continent, this one takes you to Antarctica, and it's at a remote location. It's not near any other, it's not near McMurdo. It's not near any of the other stations. It's completely isolated and meant to be completely desolate, which is what our 6 scientists go into, having to create and prepare a world that is ready to come to an end.
Talk about the monster, girl. Talk about the monster. As they're working to do this, they have an unseen creature that picks them off one by one, and you're going to enter a world where there is a lot of trauma bonding.
And because they can't see this creature, they don't know how to fight it. And they have a choice to either turn against each other or support each other and live through it. And I don't want to give away the ending, but some of them make some very, very bad choices.
What you're saying is the odds of a sequel are low.
The odds of a sequel, well, could be 50-50. It depends.
Patricia.
Sequel with one person. Yes, Jim?
So, why don't you tell us a little bit about what we're falling into in this particular cozy mystery?
Thank you for asking, Jim. I'm getting old, really old. And there are certain things that I've always wanted to write about. And one of them is a fish out of water character, which Marve is. And the other one, you often hear about the damsel in distress trope, which kind of irritates me. So this story, since one of the targets on the hit list, suspected hit list, is a guy, I get to do a twist on the damsel in distress trope and put the dude in distress.
Nice.
Excellent.
That just hit me. I'm like, yes.
Yeah, and the damsel has to save him. She has to figure out a way to rescue him.
And so, and because she's, you like you said earlier, she's a fish out of water. She's a librarian,
Yes.
come to town. So why don't we find out a little bit more about the town and the people that she's going to get to play with?
Okay, she is a native New Yorker, born and raised. She falls into that New York minute. I don't have time to listen to your sob story. Just come in, tell me what you need, and then get out. But in a lot of Southern towns, the conversation is an art. So she has to adjust to a lot of things like that. One of the exchanges that she's trying to deal with is she opens her own doors, for example. She gets in and out of the car on her own. She gets in and out of the buildings on her own. But Spencer is Southern born and raised. And he has been taught to open the door for women. So there are things that she is trying to adjust to, and there are things that she just won't adjust to. One of which is having people open the door for her. She could do it on her own. She's got two hands.
So we're waiting to kill off. So we're not going to kill off Spencer, I feel sure. Maybe.
How do you know that, Jim? How do you know?
Knowing you, he's already dead on the floor by chapter 3.
Was this the second book in the series or the first?
The second, thank you for asking. Yeah. In the first one, there's just one murderer. In this one, we've got a whole list.
Nice.
The list gets short. Marisa, let's talk a little bit about the world of the Valkyries. Let's dive a little bit deeper into this universe of yours and maybe talk a little bit about your story.
Yeah. So Hit World was created by William Allen Webb and Larry Hoy. And then they said, you know what, we need a spinoff and Marisa should be in charge of it, which is bananas. But I said yes. So Valkyries. So in Hit World, murder is legal as long as you have the right paperwork and you pay the right fee and employ the right people. And so that's Life Enders International. However, you can't operate like that without consequences. So another organization has risen across the world, and they are coming after Life Enders International, LEI, from the inside out. So they're trying to murder the organization from the inside out. So the Valkyries are a disavowed but funded group. And so in my short story, Bryn is actually a recruiter for LEI and has been for like 20 years. And her boss's boss, who she hates, sends her on an information gathering mission that is not information gathering, and all things go awry. and shenanigans ensue. And at the end, she's in charge of stuff. But because she's a recruiter, she's worked in HR, so she writes memos in her head when things go sideways. And so the story is called Dear Cynthia. Cynthia is her boss's boss. And I can't tell you some of the language she uses because it's adult. But it's the kind of memo that you maybe have wanted to write your boss's boss. Yeah. So it's really fun. The other fun thing about Hit World is murder is legal. And also, like I said, everything that can exist does exist, but a lot of people don't know about it. So Bryn, my Valkyrie, is charged with hunting down somebody who's basically made out of magic. And so there's just a lot. It's a lot of mess. It's a lot. Things, like I said, things go very sideways, but like magic is involved. There might be multicolored, intelligent rhinoceros people from other planets. You don't know anything.
Is that rhinoceros named Spencer? I get.
You'll have to read to find out who shows up. But I will tell you, one of the authors, this has been called out in a bunch of the reviews, rightly so. One of the authors wrote a story about an actual Valkyrie, and her Pegasus is a shapeshifter. So when they come to this dimension, the Pegasus has to blend in. So she becomes a very fancy car, but still sassy and talks. And it's fantastic. And so I do think half the reason this character gets recruited for Valkyries is because they want the magic horse. So whomst amongst us would not want a magic horse? Is what I'm saying.
Magic horse.
That's what I'm saying. Right.
So Paige.
Okay.
Let's talk about this world that you're wrapping up. What's everybody going to get out of this grand epic fantasy?
Well, it's the land you arrive in is a land. It's a conquered land. The Farlanders have come from across the ocean 1,100 years previously, and basically not only taken over the land of Arnon, but they have disrupted the mythology and the history of the land as conquerors do. And so you are in a world where it's kind of, you got cowboy knights, so it's a loosely Old West American, Southwestern kind of landscape that folks are moving through. But you have dragons that control the weather. Thus the title of the first book, which is Dragon Weather. But you're dealing with a land where it's very patriarchal, but the stories have been twisted so that education becomes indoctrination. And you're dealing with a land where if you want to know the true stories and the true histories, you have to dig deep. And the deeper you dig, the more danger you're in. And so you start off in the first book following, they're adult books. They deal with adult themes. I tend toward a literary writing style, as that's my background. But you start off, you meet the two characters. Most of the time they're middle-aged, but you do meet them as children as they become very dear friends, and basically help each other. They both have lost their mothers in various ways. And you have this bond that happens because they're both kind of misfits. And they're both striving to be outside their station. She wants to be educated in ways that she's not allowed to be. And he wants to step outside of his cultural station because he's a native of the land, and only the descendants of the invaders are allowed to join the Dragon Slayers. And he wants to do that. And so the struggle ensues within each of them as they try to step outside their cultural roles. And then things go awry when she takes it too far and he thinks he has to save her, but does he really? And so you're moving through this world where story is power, where lies hold sway and truth is kind of anathema and you have to fight to find it, where education can go two ways. It can be empowering or it can be indoctrination, depending on the situation that you're in. And so you're dealing with a lot of interpersonal and cultural clashes that move the characters through the story until things come to a head in a great big storm. So, yeah.
That might lead to the name.
Maybe.
Well, you know, one of the best parts about being a writer is when you get to discover new things, fall down rabbit holes, figure out you really don't know what you're doing at certain times and go, I got to go figure this out and be an expert by, I got to be an expert in particle physics by noon. So when you're looking at the story process, when you're looking at putting together the anthologies, when you're putting all these things together, it's always fun to see what's the one thing, because every time you write should teach you something, or at least you learn what you thought you already knew. So, John, what was the big one thing that you learned, discovered, rabbit hole you fell down? What was it about this one that really will stick with you?
Actually, there's a lot in this book, including mentally building an entire hotel in Ocean City. But the thing that will stick with me is that the tutors, starting with Henry and going forward for several monarchs, all had the same jester. And I needed somebody to introduce essentially Herne the Hunter. And, looking at the time period and all that, I just loved the jester. Just see. Anyway, the jester of the tutor's jester, and how he kind of he was only in one story, but how he kind of set the stage for not only a couple of the other stories, but also a story that I wrote in a completely different collection. So and plus I must say that the jester is in part, at least my version of the jester, is in part fashioned after the late great C.J. Henry, who was the ultimate jester.
So, Amy, what rabbit hole did you trip over? Whose warren did you fall across?
Oh, let's see. I ran down 2 rabbit holes doing this story. The first one was trying to research an ancient pantheon that there's very little and conflicting information on. One of the goddesses had like 3 or 4 different names and different aspects. So I just kind of said, okay, well, this one is going to be that goddess. This is going to be that goddess. Split them off. But I spent hours researching, trying to get them all figured out. And the other thing was the plants. So yes, I created several plants for this one, but it's a jungle. Why not pick plants that are actually in existence? So I went down the other rabbit hole with researching plants. And, oh, by the way, this one's a bit of a hallucinogenic. Oh, so is that one. Hey, so is this one. Yeah. I actually ended up cutting a couple plants that I had planned to put in to the appendix, because I figured between the real ones and the ones I created, I had enough possible hallucinogenic causing plants for a YA story. Yes. Like, oops.
That's the ingredient list for the next school bake sale. So
let's hope
what's
not.
the right
I'd have
number,
to go
though?
search. I'd have to go hunting for these. They're not in this continent.
Jenny, what rabbit hole did you fall down in space?
Or
space squid hole did you trip over?
Right. Fortunately for me, Leanna Brooks, who's another author and a friend of mine, is a marine biologist, because it dawned on me that by me saying this planet is exploding and throwing these things out there, everyone was going to call BS. And so she and I spent a couple hours with her giving me a massive crash course in marine biology and how this could work. And basically said, she goes, honestly, absolutely, it could work. They're in this frozen, cold. It wouldn't be a problem. They're so big, they could be keeping, their food sources within and birthing and everything else. So it's actually scientifically provable. And there's always the couple of words, the amazium word, right? That toss it in there and it makes, and chelating is the big word in there, the chelating agent, which is a real thing. But she's like, just yada, yada, yada on that one. But that was the big one. And I do want to say one point that was really different in doing Predator. The only research you can do on a work for hire piece is what they will allow you to look at. So my research on Predator was completely different from almost any research I've ever done, other than when I was in an X-Files anthology, in that all I had to do was make sure, are my descriptions right? Am I using the right guns? That's what they cared about. Character development. Make sure you're referring to the right weapon, right? Because the fan base is very, 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 very well versed in this stuff. So, in terms of research, it's way more fun to do the research we're all talking about, the rabbit hole, because you get more that you get to do. I mean, I love doing Predator, but the research for it is completely different. And there is almost nothing I can take from that. How John was saying he's using, wow, I found this and I can use it in other things. There is nothing I can take from what I got from Predator unless I get to do another Predator story. But I can take all of the marine biology and use that elsewhere. So it was much more of a fun rabbit hole on that.
So, Lucienne, what rabbit hole did you fall down in the ice in the Grand Arctic?
What rabbit hole didn't I fall down? I had 6 scientists from 6 different disciplines. And it was traumatizing in some ways because I was going, I don't know anything about any of these disciplines, but I have to wing it. So I fell down a lot of mostly botany rabbit holes. I learned a lot about how to make plants do what you want them to do. I learned a lot about food science. And then finally, I learned a lot about survivalism because one of the characters is a survivalist. And it was interesting, but I can handle a lot of disaster situations now. And I'm very pleased to say that. So hopefully none are forthcoming, but
It's helpful to be ready for an apocalypse.
Right. You never know.
You never know. So, Patricia, what rabbit hole did your librarian fall over?
It's really difficult following Lucienne because her story's so interesting.
Thank you.
But it was interesting what Amy was saying about finding conflicting information when you're doing the research. I fell down a poison rabbit hole. And as Amy said, sometimes you find conflicting information on the internet, which could be really frustrating. And how long does it take the poison to react? What is the profile of a killer who would choose poison as the weapon? How quickly does the poison kill you? It was interesting, but it was also a little frustrating when you look at the different sources and they're not quite saying the same thing.
So now we have a hint as to how a lot of bodies hit the floor.
Faulty research.
Marisa, what rabbit hole did you fall down putting this one together?
So I had to rewrite my story. My Word document crashed and ate my story halfway through, which is potentially why my protagonist is as snarky as she is.
We all feel your pain.
Thank
Ow.
you. Yep. I thought this was definitely a safe space. It was
Yes,
awful.
We're all clutching right now because we've all been there.
Yeah. So, I mean, if you guys ever do read the Valkyries Initiative and you see quite how, cursy and attitudey my protagonist is, know that that was a second round addition to her life choices. So I didn't fall into a ton of rabbit holes because I had to rewrite that story like real fast. But putting together the anthology, this is my first anthology I put together all by myself. I have co-edited an anthology before. I've been in a bunch of anthologies. This is my first one. So less research rabbit hole and more organizational rabbit hole where I made index cards for everybody's story and I have a spreadsheet and I had all the information. And when it was time to put the anthology together, thank goodness for these little index cards. I stole this idea from somebody else. I just kept kind of laying them out and thinking about how do I want the emotions to go throughout this? Like, what do I want people to take away from each story? What can I add or not with these little memos from the director of the Valkyries Initiative? And it took me, that was a rabbit hole. Like that took me some time. So I keep joking that I've read every story in that anthology like 16 times. And bright side, I loved them every time. So I feel like that's a really good sign. But my rabbit hole was the actual putting together of the anthology. As you can tell, I'm not ready to let go. Like these are still right here on the side of my desk. So,
and here's the important question. Will you ever do it again?
In like a year or two. Yeah. I need to breathe for a lot. And also all the projects I got behind on while I was like putting these puzzle pieces together. I would do it again. It was the authors in this anthology are frickin' amazing. So they made my job a lot easier.
Paige?
Well, first I need to tell you that the definition of whole is nothing at all, but you can break your neck in it. Just let you guys know. Okay, so I think the thing that I kind of dove most into that I didn't realize I was going to when I started was researching cults and how people fall into them. And it's kind of timely in our universe right now, but how people accept untruth and how people become part of things that are not what they intended, and where that goes and how that happens. So I dove down that rabbit hole that I did not see coming when I started the story. I did not realize that was going to be part of it. And I learned a whole bunch of creepy and disturbing things. So not all of which made it into the story, thank God, but they are there, kind of as an undercurrent. Things you don't want to know. But I think that's the thing that I find interesting about writing is how many layers come through your story when you do the work, when you do the research, when you delve in and create those things that don't actually show up in the story, except that they do. I know you guys all know what I'm talking about. So
it's the flavoring and the seasoning.
Exactly. It's that actually, really fine ground paprika, and it's the black salt, and it's the, the white pepper and the whole thing. And I find that so fascinating in my own writing, where I can feel when something has connected because I did this over here. And I find that fascinating. So any rabbit hole I go down is always useful somewhere, even if it's not in this story directly in the end. So nothing is ever wasted.
JD, I know you had fun with this one because we talked a little bit about the other day, but what rabbit hole did you fall down pulling this rabbit out of the hat?
Quite a few. You'd think that the English part wouldn't have rabbit holes and it's already done. And I was like, okay, let me reread it. There's a particular essay that I'm just asking to get my ass kicked in public. Because it's the pejorative equivalent of Voldemort. And I'm talking about pejorative language and how some people think that not using it just makes them wonderful. And it's like pejorative behavior doesn't require pejorative language, and it's hinting and talking about that. It's something that I've written about before. It's something that's been in me before, but it's something that I don't want to let go, because I think that how we treat each other is more important than the words that we do and don't use. Yes, it's important to take care of our language. Yes, it's important to know what to say and what not to say, but how we treat each other, some people can be completely awful and think that I'm a good old Christian. And it's like, nobody. So that's on the English side. On the Spanish side that I translated, it opened several rabbit holes, which I am already diving into. First off, translating poetry is a really weird thing. And from the get-go, I said, I'm not gonna insist on maintaining the rhyme. How it sounds and how it feels and how sometimes it maintains the same essence than Spanish, and then how it varies, was fascinating to me. And eventually I'm going to do a collection where I write a poem in one language and I translate it so that you can have it on both pages and compare and contrast, and sometimes starting in English, sometimes starting in Spanish, and see just what comes out. Sometimes it's just going to be exploring the same theme, not the same poem, but the same theme. With the essays, the Spanish part had a lot of essays about Puerto Rico, and a lot of people ask me a lot of things about Puerto Rico and what it means and feels to be like Puerto Rican. From my perspective, and I always have to say that it's different than from other people, because I am filed under, you're not Puerto Rican, you don't look Puerto Rican, you don't sound Puerto Rican. You can't be Puerto Rican. And I've actually had people tell me that point blank. I had an Uber driver tell me that point blank. And I'm like, and then I start speaking in Spanish and they go like, whoa, 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 whoa. And I'm like, yeah, I'm Puerto Rican. So don't mess with me. And thirdly, two more things and I'll be quick. The short stories. When I translated the short stories, something that you do often in advertising when you're working with the Hispanic market is transcreating concepts. Transcreating, it goes beyond translation. It makes it culturally relevant. When I translated from Spanish to English, I had to make sure that no matter who read it, got it. There were a lot of jokes that I had to omit and refill with something else, just because if you read it in English, yes, it's going to be correct, but people are going to go like, what does that even mean? And it has a lot of nuances like that. So it teaches me that when I write in Spanish, it's very Puerto Rican and it has that flavor. So eventually people will know that, yeah, Puerto Rican. Second off, it teaches you to have that critical eye, because when you're editing, it's not just about making it flow, making it correct. It's making it make sense. Mm-hmm. And that was it was super frustrating. Because it's like, okay, I have to take out this paragraph and this paragraph and this paragraph. Wow, what am I going to do? And then it's super fascinating because the ways that you approach it explores different sides of the prism. It's the same prism, but it's a different shade of light. And it was fascinating in that way. And the last thing is that the last short story, by having to, I'm also doing an all Spanish version of this collection. By revisiting this, by translating this, I was like, this is actually the first chapter of a novel. Mm-hmm. And eventually I'm going to do one about fairies in Old San Juan in Puerto Rico. Thanks to that one. And that one's called Two Sugars and One Secret. It has, and I'm debating whether I write it in English or Spanish, because the story has such a Puerto Rican flavor of my youth. My mom had a store in Old San Juan. I was the smiley kid that walked around and everyone knew me. Mom had people strategically placed so that I would be as safe as possible. But I had free reign for about 4 or 5 blocks in Old San Juan. I would just eat and walk in Old San Juan. Like, hey, how you doing? I was that annoying neighbor kid that would just not shut up. But everyone was yes. Because I was a child. I am a man child now. I have evolved. I have a beard, so and I am bald in certain areas, and I'm starting with the grays because I want to compete with my brothers. But to give you an example, there's a thing called traditional lottery in Puerto Rico. Rather than just lotto tickets, you would buy this huge page of lotto tickets, and you could get like a quarter page, a third of a page, or like a square, and it would vary. The smell of those lottery tickets, I remember it still, and I remember the people who sold those tickets. And one of the characters is based on one that frequented my mom's store, and he was a super sweet guy named Manuel. Just a sweet guy. I remember the tone of his voice. I remember his smell in the morning and after a hard day selling tickets to people. The guy was such a sweetheart. And I actually named the character after a nickname that someone gave me when I was a kid. So there's a lot of things that interconnect. And then I went like, dude, you just wrote yourself a chapter 1 years ago and you hadn't realized it until now, which is happy problems, because I don't know how people get bored. I'm always short on energy and time, but never bored. So,
Yep.
And welcome to the life of being a writer.
Mhm.
So now that everybody has got a stack of stuff in their to be read pile,
Totally.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
My God.
but before we get out of here, let's make sure everybody knows where to find you, website, social media, and of course, one last shot of letting everybody know what book they've got to be getting out there and picking up tonight. So, Paige, you're up first. I'm even going to go in order.
Oh my gosh. Okay. I am Paige L. Christie. You got to throw the L in there because I've got 2 first names and people get confused. So Paige L. Christie everywhere. Website, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, you name it. Paige L. Christie. That's where you'll find me. The book coming out in October is Stormforge. It's the 4th and final book in the Legacies of Arnon series. The first book is Dragonweather. It's the Welsh spelling. It's Dragon with an I, Draigon. And come see me. Next live event, I will be at Multiverse Con in Atlanta, the 12th through the the 14th through the 16th of October. And technically the release date on this book is the 18th, but I'm going to have advanced copies for anybody who shows up at Multiverse. So come see me. All right.
JD.
if you've ever wanted to participate and contribute to Hispanic Heritage Month, you can do it with my book, because it's all in English. It's 2020, 40 pieces, and actually an extra piece because I wrote what it's like speaking English and living a bilingual life. You can find me at Instagram, on Twitter, on Facebook, on YouTube. Look for JD Estrada Writer. If you look for JD Estrada, odds are you will find someone Filipino. There are apparently a lot of Estradas, and maybe, who knows, family that I have lost in the Pacific. But JD Estrada Writer, you will find me. I do have a TikTok channel. I haven't posted anything yet. I would only dance for charity. So I'm still figuring out what I'm going to do for that.
John?
Hey, once again, I'm John L. French, and my new book, The Last Monster, is available for pre-sale now. It is officially published September 27th. I will be at Monster Mania in last weekend of September, first weekend in October, depending on your point of view. I'm on Facebook. You can follow me on BookBub. If you want to drop me a line, I'm at jfrenchfam@aol.com.
Amy?
I am A.L. Kaplan, and you can find me at A.L. Kaplan Author. Don't forget to put the author on, because there is an Al Kaplan somewhere who's also a writer. Popular name, apparently. Even though I thought I'd stick in that middle name. You can find me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and just look for A.L. Kaplan Author, and that'll be me. And my latest book is Mark of the Goddess. It came out just the beginning of the month. Look it up. It's a lot of fun and lots of plants. Danger for this poor young girl.
And once
Yes, you can see me next October 1st. I will be at the Hershey Town Book Festival in downtown Hershey. So come on by, and everything tastes better with a book.
Jenny?
GiniKoch.com is my website. I'm on Twitter, Facebook. I have both my regular page, my author page, Hairspray and Rock and Roll, and author of the Alien Catherine Kitty Cat series. I am on Pinterest. I look like I'm on Instagram, but I'm really not. I'm not going to be on TikTok because I could spend hours practicing retaping, or I could write, and I picked writing. I know, priorities. My next public appearance will be at World Fantasy Con in New Orleans. Come to NOLA. As I think it starts November 3rd through November 6th or 7th. So it's the first weekend in November, and that's where you can find me. Come down, and if I'm not at the con, I'll be at Acme Oyster House.
Lucienne?
Okay, well, I am at silverhollowstories.com. You can find me on Facebook, Lucienne LeBeau, author. I am Spellvira on Twitter, or if you want to reach out to me via email, it's author@silverhollowstories.com.
Patricia?
I am at patriciasargeant.com. That's SARGEANT. My latest release is Murder Out of Character, the second book in my Peach Coast Library Mystery Cozy Mystery series. I will be at the Brooklyn Book Festival on October 2nd, and you can find me on Twitter at Books by Patricia and on Facebook as Patricia Sargeant.
And Marisa?
MarisaWolf.net or MarisaWolf.com. I go both ways. On Instagram, you can get me at Book Dogs, because if you like books and you like dogs, you'll probably like my Instagram. And newest release is the Valkyries Initiative. So get in on the ground floor of a fun new universe. In person, I will be at Factory Con, which isn't really a con. It's more of a hangout for Chris Kennedy Publishing authors, artists, editors, and fans. So we will be in North Carolina for that. And then not again until January, when I will be a guest at MarsCon, Virginia Beach in January. Come join us. It'll be amazing. Yeah.
And I've had the privilege of trying to herd all these cats this evening. You can find me at jamespnettles.com, authoressentials.net, authoressentialsworkshops.com, the Speculative Fiction Academy, and of course here at ConTinual. And we will see all of you again soon.
Bye.